Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is an amazing game, from the presentation, to the characters, and in general to its content. But one thing I really like about it is how well it portrays the fighters. As you all know, Smash is a platform party fighting game, and if you show its roster to someone who's never played it before, they would probably be shocked about some character inclusions. Personally, I never knew how an Animal Crossing character or an arcade legend would be able to fight in Smash, but Sakurai and his team did an amazing job. Even though they aren't the type of characters to fight, they still feel natural and not out of place in battle. Also, they still managed to reference the series they originate from. Other characters too do a good job of portraying their franchise, despite not originating from a fighting game. Hero has his RPG mechanics, the Inklings can spray paint on their opponents, and Steve can build structures and farm materials. This is all very interesting to see, and the same can be said with many other characters. But being the Fire Emblem fan I am, I'll only be talking about the characters from this franchise for this video. The FE fighters are an interesting bunch. Just like Hero, their games are also part of the role-playing / tactical genre. But unlike him, they don't scream RPG from their design. Still, I don't think that's a problem. Generally, units in Fire Emblem fight with their weapons, and in Smash, that's exactly what they do. Plus, there's more than meets the eye with these characters and how they are presented in Ultimate. Let's take a look at them, shall we? Mart was the very first Fire Emblem character to be introduced in Smash. In his series, he was the main protagonist in 4 titles, but he also makes minor appearances in other games. In Ultimate, Mart's design is based on his outfit from New Mystery of the Emblem, so in this video, I'll mainly be using that title for comparison to keep things simple. Mart is a character with good speed and solid power. His playstyle relies heavily on fundamentals, precision, and spacing. He's generally considered a mid-tier amongst top players, but how well does he fare in his home series? Well, he's definitely more respected in his games than in Ultimate. In FE12, Mart is seen as a very competent unit. His base stats are pretty good, and the same can be said about his growth rates. He's also without a doubt the best character to use against the final boss. Now, if you're not familiar with the franchise, you're probably wondering what these numbers signify. Well, just like in any RPG, stats are one of the many factors that affect how good a character is in battle. Generally, the higher the number, the better it is. In Fire Emblem, base stats are basically the values that a character would have when they first appear on a map. In other words, their starting stats. While growth rates represent the chance of each individual stat to increase during a level up. So if Mart were to level up, he would have a 90% chance of increasing his HP, a 60% chance of increasing his strength, a 0% chance to improve his magic, and yeah, you get the gist of it. Typically, Mart will have amazing offenses, decent bulk, and an excellent luck stat. But how well does this match with his Smash iteration? Honestly, it's not too far off. Just like in Fire Emblem, his speed is pretty good. He has the fastest walking speed in the game alongside Lucina, he has the 5th quickest initial dash, tying with Mewtwo and Lucina again, and he's in the top 25 in terms of running speed, beating the likes of Pichu and Inkling. His strength stat also resembles his Smash counterpart. It's not bad, although something special about Mart is his tipper mechanic. If he manages to hit an opponent with the tip of his sword, Mart will deal more damage and more knockback, but if he attacks a foe with the base of the sword, less percentage will be inflicted. So depending on how well he's able to land his tippers, he's either hitting like a truck or doing mediocre damage. And that's where his skill stat comes into play. Well, not really. In Fire Emblem, the skill stat affects the character's hit rate and the critical hit rate. With that growth stat, Mart is surely a consistent fighter who will rarely miss his target. So in Fire Emblem's skill term, it doesn't really match. But literally, I'd say it does. You really have to be skilled to play with Mart and his tipper mechanic. Proper spacing, movement, and precision is essential to land those sweet spots. Hitting a foe with his tipper is similar to Fire Emblem's critical hit. You'll deal a ton of damage, but the only problem is, landing Mart's sweet spot isn't as easy as hitting enemies in his original game. The hitbox of his tipper seems small at times because of how his sour spot overlaps it. Now, FE's luck stat can't really be compared to Smash, as it generally affects your opponent's critical hit rate and your evasion rate, but we can definitely compare his defense and resistance. For example, his mediocre defense stat is similar to how he won't be able to tank as many hits as someone like Incineroar because of his weight. Well, Mart isn't the lightest fighter out there, but he's no heavyweight. His terrible resistance stat is comparable to how Mart has a hard time approaching fighters that have superior range and projectiles. In Fire Emblem, Res is defined as a unit's ability to defend against magical attacks. With that growth, Mart will receive a hefty amount of damage when facing mages that can attack at a distance with their spells. In that regard, his Res does seem to match quite well. It's honestly pretty cool that his stat line in his games is somewhat similar to how he is in Smash. But what about the attacks he uses in-game? Mart wields the Falchion, a divine weapon. A New Mystery of the Emblem, it can only be used by him. The Falchion grants him pretty useful advantages in battle. It is effective against dragons, and it can be used to restore 10 HP. Now, this obviously isn't incorporated in Smash. Healing on command and dealing extra damage against dragon characters would be pretty nice, but or else everyone will just counterpick Ridley players with Mart and all the other Falchion users. Now, let's take a look at his special attacks. For his neutral special, he stabs his foe. This move packs quite a punch. If it's fully charged, Mart will break his opponent's shield in one hit. This may be a reference to one of his starting weapons, the rapier. This sword type is mainly used for stabbing, and in Fire Emblem, it is effective against bulky cavalry and armored units. So piercing shields isn't out of the ordinary for Mart. His side special is called Dancing Blades. He does have this ability in Fire Emblem Fates, but his game was created after Melee, which was when the move was first introduced. But hey, let's compare them nonetheless. Dancing Blade grants the user +3 speed and -1 defense. This is actually quite interesting, because in the past Smash games, the speed of Mart's side special was pretty average, but in Ultimate, it became even quicker. This might have been because of his ability in Fates. For Dolphin Slash, I couldn't find anything concrete, but for his down special counter, Sakurai stated that it is based on Fire Emblem's combat, where battles are divided into phases. You get to attack your foes first on the player phase, while they initiate on you during the enemy phase. Counter is supposed to replicate that pattern. I'm guessing Smash counter is trying to portray a fight where you don't get damage and counter attack a foe, because there's no type of parry or guarding mechanic in Fire Emblem. His final smash is Critical Hit. It is a strong sword strike that has the potential to kill a foe at 0, which portrays very well how deadly crits are in Fire Emblem. I also like how they showed the HP bar when you land a hit. Anyways, Mart's representation in Smash isn't too far off from how he is in his home series. The stats match quite well, and he even fights with elegance like the fine prince he is. But what about his Echo Fighter? Lucina is one of the main protagonists in Fire Emblem Awakening, and in Smash, she is a clone of Mart. At first, she was supposed to simply be a color swap for him, but as development progressed, Sakurai and his team decided to make her as a separate character, a clone to be more precise. Now, being Mart's Echo Fighter isn't too weird for her, honestly. Lucina is his descendant, her default stat spread is similar to his, and she even uses his name in Awakening. In Smash, the only thing that sets both of them apart are their weapons. Lucina's parallel falchion does not have a tipper mechanic. Instead, her sword deals the same amount of damage regardless of what part of it hits your foe. This makes her more consistent than her ancestor. In fact, that's part of the reason why they are both so far apart in most people's tier lists. There's no reason to use Mart if Lucina does everything in a more reliable way. That's not to say that Mart is a bad character though, because with good accuracy, he is a powerful fighter. Nonetheless, because Lucina is a clone of him, she matches up quite well with her Fire Emblem counterpart. Her Smash iteration is just as good as her viability in Awakening. Although, one thing that's weird about her is her attitude. She sounds so cocky, and so many of her lines sound out of character.
This is the Hero King? And they call you the Radiant Hero?
Lucina would never speak this way to these inspiring living legends. But anyways, let's move on to another fighter. Roy is an interesting character. He was added into Melee because his game, Binding Blade, was in development at the time. However, Roy ended up appearing in Smash first rather than in his own game. His iterations in both titles are actually quite different. That's because of how Sakurai envisioned him during development. When he first heard a description of the character, Sakurai thought that Roy would be a strong and energetic person compared to Mart. But actually, both of them are really similar in terms of personality. After playing Binding Blade, Sakurai did realize this, but decided to keep Roy as he is in future titles. So basically, these two people are pretty much different characters. In Fire Emblem, Roy is a kind-hearted person that wants to avoid unnecessary bloodshed, while in Ultimate, he is a powerful, hot-headed boy that screams a lot. That's actually why Sakurai made him attack with a reverse grip for some of his moves. He thought that it would showcase really well the image of a fighter that likes to get close and personal. In fact, this is portrayed in Roy's fighting style. Compared to Mart, his blade deals more damage at the hilt rather than the tip. This shows how Roy must be played aggressively to get the advantage over his foe. Another thing that differentiates both Roys from each other are their stats. First, let's take a look at Mart and Roy's growth rates. Mart clearly has better stats overall, but in Smash, it's the opposite. Roy is way faster on both the ground and in the air, and his attacks deal a lot of damage and knockback. A well done string of hits will lead to a lot of percentage. Not only that, but landing Roy's sweet spot is way easier compared to Mart. The only thing these two have in common are their specials. Well, in terms of animation that is. Despite looking similar, they do differentiate a lot. For example, Roy damages himself when he fully charges his neutral special, and his up special has a super armor. One of the few things that he shares with his FE counterpart is the Binding Blade. Well, it isn't effective against dragons, and it doesn't boost his defense and resistance, nor heals him, but it does emit fire like in his original game. Also, his final smash is similar to his critical hit animation. So yeah, Roy ended up being quite different from who he actually is. One thing that's funny is that he's considered to be one of the worst lords in Fire Emblem history because of how bad of a unit he is. But in Smash, he's a very good fighter and is considered to be a high tier. Just like Lucina, Chrom is one of the main protagonists in Fire Emblem Awakening. He was a fighter that was heavily requested, and he eventually did get his chance in Ultimate as an echo of Roy. This was quite an interesting choice because the two of them aren't really related, unlike most echoes. But anyways, there is some correlation between the two. Chrom's personality really matches Roy's Smash iteration. He's an impulsive person that is direct and who unflinchingly charges forward to achieve his goals. He also fights in a bold and rough way. Chrom's fashion is similar to Lucina's, in which he also does not have a sour or sweet spot. Because his damage is balanced throughout the whole blade, he can be more consistent and neutral. Unlike Roy, Chrom can utilize the full range of his blade to zone out his opponents aggressively. But similar to him, he does strive from playing dominantly due to his excellent speed and power. Still, you must be cautious when playing him, because his recovery is just terrible. One mistake can easily lead you off stage, and that will be the end of your stock. This aspect of his playstyle really matches his personality. Chrom is the type of person to face any challenge head-on, no matter the risk. But what about his stats? Well, his growths are similar to the previous FE fighters. Amazing offenses and decent defenses. His speed and strength are perfectly portrayed in Smash, because man, does Chrom deal a ton of damage. One well done combo is enough to put you at kill percent, and with his rushdown playstyle, he can be very oppressive and hard to deal with. Similar to Roy, he has the 13th fastest run speed and the 4th best airspeed, which helps him do combos and juggle with ease. His defenses too are portrayed quite well. He struggles against projectiles, and if you're off stage, chances are you'll die. For his specials, they're for the most part the same as Roy, but his up special, Soaring Slash, is actually borrowed from Ike. Chrom having the Radiant Hero's Ether does make sense. He does learn the skill when he becomes a Great Lord, and he also does the same animation in some cutscenes. But despite that, his up special has a different name. In fact, it's his final smash, Awakening Ether, that has the name. It acts differently than its FE counterpart, where you do one hit that deals damage as if the foe's defense was reduced by 50%, and another that heals half the damage inflicted. But the animation is similar to how he uses it in Awakening. Chrom is honestly portrayed pretty well. He's amazing in both his own game and in Smash, and even though he's an Echo fighter, he does have a separate identity to him because of his balanced blade. Ike appears in Fire Emblem Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. Both of his FE iterations actually appear in Ultimate, although they're just cosmetics in Smash. He's definitely one of the most unique sword fighters in the game. His playstyle is drastically different from the other fighters covered in this video, which is quite fitting since in his home series, he's also different from most main characters, where he is one of the few lords that isn't from noble birth. This can actually be seen with his brutal attacks and how he swings his sword with ferocity. He doesn't have the grace and elegance of the other FE lords, which is quite a nice touch. Despite his violent strikes, Ike doesn't play as aggressively as the other swordsmen. He relies on fundamentals, spacing, and conditioning. Though, in his advantage state, he can be very intimidating with his combos and follow-ups. He's generally seen as a very solid fighter, and the same can be said in his FE titles. In Path of Radiance, Ike has solid stats all around with good strength, speed, skill, and defense. One thing that is interesting about him is that he loses a lot of points in his speed and resistant growth stat in Radiant Dawn. But he's still a fairly fast unit because of his base stat speed of 23. Honestly, he isn't too far off from his Smash iteration. His attack deals a lot of damage like his strength stat. His speed is somewhat the same, as he isn't as fast as in Path of Radiance, but he's definitely not as slow as in Radiant Dawn. His good bulk is portrayed by his weight, but he might still die early because of his predictable recovery. Now in Smash, Ike wields Ragnall, a legendary sword that deals a lot of damage. In Fire Emblem, it lets him counter at the distance with sword beams, negate non-rad critical hits, and gives him +5 to his defense stat. Obviously, none of this applies to his ultimate version. He theoretically can hit far range opponents with his up B and neutral special, but those aren't sword beams. It would have been sick if Ike could do them like Cloud and Link. But on the topic of specials, Ike's neutral special is Eruption, a fire-based attack. The blue flames are referenced to the ones that appear at the end of Radiant Dawn. His side special Quick Draw is a Smash original, but a skill by the same name does appear in Fire Emblem Fates, although it can only be learned by archers and Kinshi flyers. His up special is his iconic Ether, which doesn't heal him like in his home series, but keeps the same kill power. His final smash is also Ether, but on steroids. Not being a clone, Ike is definitely one of the unique sword fighters. He's slower than most of them, and his playstyle is different. He does differ from his FE counterpart due to his somewhat slow speed and the absence of Ragnar's sword beam, but he's still a well-designed character nonetheless. Robin is also one of the main characters in Awakening, but unlike Chrom and Lucina, they're a customizable avatar, in which you can change your name and appearance. Robin is an interesting fighter in Smash. Not only do they use two different swords, but they also fight with magic. They definitely started the trend of making FE characters more unique and distinct from one another. A special thing about Robin is their weapon durability. Each of their magic tomes and 11th sword all have limited use. When a weapon's gauge reaches 0, the Robins won't be able to use some attacks that require them. If their 11th sword is depleted, they'll use the Bronze Sword, one of their starting items in Awakening. This resource-like mechanic is present in most Fire Emblem games. It incites the players to take calculated decisions when fighting, and that's actually the same way you should be playing as Robin in Smash. They're a fighter that thrives off outranging their foes. You generally want to stay away from your opponent's attacks with your movement and zoning to counterattack when the opportunity comes. Because of your limited use of magic, you'll have to carefully utilize your spells and 11th sword. So don't spam needlessly. When your opponent whiffs an attack, that's when you punish them with a damaging combo. This analytical playstyle really captures Robin's tactical character. But what about their stats? Well, without any modification to their boons and banes, these are their growths. Robin has an amazing and balanced stat spread, but in Smash, it's a different story. While the majority of them do match, their speed isn't similar. They're one of the slowest characters in the game, and their run speed is atrocious, only beating Incineroar, who's in last place. So yeah, maybe Sakurai used the speed bane for his Robin in his playthrough. But honestly speaking, I think they tuned down their speed because a fast sword fighter with projectiles would be pretty annoying to fight. For their specials, the Robins use magical tomes. They do have access to all of them in Awakening except for one, Nosferatu. The spell can only be wielded by dark mages and sorcerers, which Robin isn't. But Sakurai does know this and said he only gave it to them for fun. Their final smash is Pair Up, which is honestly quite fitting because of how broken of a mechanic it is in Awakening, and how Robin and Chrom are always associated together. Anyways, I really like how Robin was portrayed in Smash. While their speed is an issue, their calculated playstyle because of their weapon durability really captures their FE adoration. But one thing that's out of character is female Robin's win quote when beating Lucina. Nonetheless, Robin is definitely one of the most unique designed Fire Emblem fighters. Similar to Robin, the Corns are also a customizable character that can change their appearance and boons and banes. They're the main character in Fates and were introduced to Smash back in the Wii U version. Corn is another FE character that stands out of the sword fighter class because of their design. They too use more than just a blade in combat. Alongside the legendary Yato, the Corns can transform into a dragon. In Fates, they needed to use a Dragon Stone to control their powers, but that is nowhere to be seen in Smash. Still, this aspect of them makes them a pretty unique fighter. For a lot of their moves, Corn utilize their draconic powers. They especially use it for their strong singular attacks like their counter, throws, and smash attacks, probably to reference that they cannot double when transformed. Speaking about not doubling, despite Corn's amazing speed stat, they are pretty slow in Smash. Their run speed and air mobility are not the best. Well, at least the other stats are somewhat accurate. A lot of Corn's attacks are actually animations used in Fates, which is quite a nice touch. The most notable ones are their specials. Dragon Fang Shot, their neutral special, and Dragon Lunge, their side special, are both referenced to their Dragon Fang skill in Fates. It's interesting that the Corns utilize their dragon powers for the majority of their moves. Despite the fact that their preferred way to fight is with the Yato, they sparingly use it in Smash. In Fates, it's quite the opposite. The Yato is a very good weapon, while the Dragonstone isn't too useful after the early game. Even in the story, your dragon form isn't shown at all after chapter 5. It's only when recruiting Kana you are reminded of it. But still, the dragon transformation is what makes them unique. They aren't some generic sword fighter. A lot of their attacks are very distinct, which is very refreshing for a Fire Emblem character. Violet is the latest FE rep in Smash and comes from Fire Emblem 3 houses. Just like the other two previous fighters, they also take a new approach in combat using more than just the blade. Alongside the Sword of the Creator, they wield 3 hero relics. There's Dimitri's Arid Bard, Edelgard's Amir, and Claude's Failnaught. Each of these weapons are designated to a directional input for every attack Violet makes. Side attacks are for Arid Bard, downwards for Amir, neutral for Failnaught, and the rest for their sword. Their sword is a pretty unique weapon because of its whip-like attributes. They're able to perform attacks that have a lot of range compared to other characters, and because of their heroic relics, the Violets set themselves apart as a fighter. Even in the Fire Emblem series, they're different from most lords. That's because in 3 houses, they can use whatever weapon they want, so there's a multitude of ways to use them, especially with their balanced stat spread. But how does this translate into Smash? Honestly, everything matches decently well, except speed. What is up with the newer FE characters and their low speed? Well, it's probably a balancing factor because of how absurd Violet's range is. Having a fast character with long reach can be pretty nuts. But still, they don't feel out of character in my opinion. They're a mix of a zoner and powerhouse fighter, and their bad speed is compensated by their high range and damage output. Spacing is the key to using them, as they rely more on the defensive bait and punish playstyle. Playing them really feels like being a teacher. You wait for your foe to answer you in battle, then you counter with an appropriate response. If they make a mistake, you go in at maximum percent. If not, you keep them at maximum range to pressure them until their next whiff. All of Violet's specials use the hero relics, and their names are literally the names of the weapons themselves. It doesn't make sense to just call the specials Failnaught, Arid Bar, and Amir, because all the Violets can do is wield them. They can't use the relics' full power and combat arts because of the absence of the appropriate crest. Still, I like how their specials all deal insane damage and knockback. It really captures the deadly power of these legendary weapons. Their sword too is equally as powerful. A cool thing to note is that the Creator's sword is glowing and emitting fire because of their crested flames. With it, they can use the weapon's full might and combat art, which is portrayed in their final Smash as an even powerful version of its treehouse version. Anyways, Violet is a pretty fun and unique character compared to most sword fighters. They make a lot of reference to 3 houses and are really satisfying to play with because of their amazing offensive prowess and impressive range. It's a shame that they aren't as fast as their treehouse iterations, but still, they're a pretty cool character. Also, they have one of the coolest victory animations in Smash. And that's all for the Fire Emblem characters in Ultimate. We definitely came a long way with them, and you can see how they started to differentiate themselves from one another as the Smash series progressed. It's a shame that most of them are clones, which puts them in a bad light, but man, they are all really fun to play.